Hello and welcome to our Lakeside chat. We are David Wofford and Katie Noonan, co-chairs of the Rotary Nature Center Friends. And we're so happy that you can join us tonight.
As we begin our program tonight, it's important for us to acknowledge that we are on stolen land, that Lake Merritt is part of Ohlone territory. We hear now from Corrina Gould, spokesperson for the Confederated Villages of Lishan and co-founder of Segura Te Land Trust.
Good afternoon, relatives. My name is Corrina Gould. I am the spokesperson for the Confederated Villages of Lishan. We are here today at what most folks think of as Lake Merritt. We are in the territory of Huichin. Huichin is actually a territory that encompasses 6 Bay Area cities: Oakland, Berkeley, Alameda, Emeryville, Albany, and Piedmont. And so this is a place that my ancestors have been since the beginning of time. And this was a place of abundance. I'm so happy that people from all walks of life that now come into our territory can enjoy this beautiful place that my ancestors have enjoyed since the beginning of time. My relationship to the land that I have been born to, raising my children and grandchildren here, has been to tell the story, the truth of what happened on this land before other people came here. I'm hoping that as we begin to learn these lessons of fires in California, the pandemic that's happening, that human beings come back to living in reciprocity with the earth.
Thank you, Corrina. It's always lovely and generous to hear your welcome as we begin our shows. And we're looking forward to hearing more about the work of Segura Te in helping to bring awareness to people and helping to people to think about what it will take to establish greater reciprocity with the earth and all of the people and the beings that are in it. So really fortunate to have that welcome. So I would like to share a few things before we introduce our speaker. We're a all-volunteer nonprofit. We're real excited about some of our activities that we're going to be doing this year, and I wanted to share some of them with you. So, so this is our 67th Lakeside Chat, and we have really, they're varied, they're interesting, they're wonderful ways to get to know Lake Merritt and natural history and the community here. So very excited about that and ones to come. Rotary Nature Center Friends is an independent, all-volunteer nonprofit. We are not part of the city of Oakland, but we are our own nonprofit, and we engage the community in real science and stewardship activities to steward the nation's first wildlife refuge, Lake Merritt. Some of our activities focus on science, measuring dissolved oxygen, temperature, salinity, water clarity, and pH in Lake Merritt. And some of us go back a number of decades doing that in an amateur way. We do plankton monitoring, especially interesting since Lake Merritt is a place where people do a lot of recreation, and since it suffered a severe plankton bloom in 2022, it's interesting to see what the community is like. So we do that. We build understanding and community by working together with different generations, serving all people in Oakland, both public and private schools, and working with organizations that are committed to serving the diverse community and to social and environmental justice. I'd like to just share some of these organizations quickly at the beginning. We are very grateful to have the support and to be able to partner with in activities these wonderful organizations in Oakland and often focused at Lake Merritt. One of the exciting things big projects and exciting things that we have going is a UC extension agriculture and natural resources course based at Lake Merritt called California Naturalist Certification. And we had class last fall, and we're planning another one this coming October 3rd. In this course, we've had a participation of wonderful people who had wonderful talents, and we all came together. And it's continuing to provide activities and more community here after the course actually closed. I'm excited to say that Adrian is going to be one of the instructors for this course, so we're real happy to have him. We've been supported by the Alameda County Clean Water Program in this course and in other activities that we have done. I'd like to share our connection with the New Voices Are Rising organization from the Rose Foundation, and they come out every year and provide wonderful fellows, high school students that have an incredible presence and ability to inquire and also to share what they've learned about water justice and about taking care of the planet. Next, we've been doing plankton monitoring, as I mentioned, and we're excited about working with the Junior Center of Art and Science at Lake Merritt to take a look at plankton and maybe think of some artistic ways and expressive ways that people can get to know our plankton. They're not all bad. In fact, they're essential to the ecosystem, and so this will be really a fun and appropriate place for us to do that kind of activity. I had mentioned we had worked with the Alameda County Clean Water on a restoration project at Oak Glen Park on Glen Echo Creek. And here we see a group of high school students from Oakland Tech that carved out a little plant plot here and planted it with native plants of cultural significance to the indigenous people who live here. And so we're taking care of it now by doing drive-by watering, and we're planning a work day on June 20th there, if anybody, I'm sorry, June 14th, Sunday, if anybody would like to come to Oak Glen Park to take a look at what's happening there. We're working with the local community. Yeah, and finally, wanted to shout out some of our graduates. This is Cynthia Atkinson, who works at Skyline Gardens, which is an amazing restoration area in the Oakland Hills, owned by E.B. Mudd, and she gave us an incredible tour just a couple weeks ago. And from the top of the ridge, you could see Lake Merritt from the top of the hills. It was just beautiful. So with that, we have big projects coming up in this year. We're looking forward to working with everyone, and we're very proud of what we've done and proud of Oakland and all of the people who work to take care of Lake Merritt and bring people together at Lake Merritt. So we will now turn our attention to our wonderful speaker for tonight, who is Adrian Cotter. Adrian, I've known him. He's a really a Renaissance person, and I got to know him because he was doing underwater robotic vehicles at the same time I was. I think that might have been one of the first times I got to know him. But he's been in Oakland for 30 years. And in the Bay Area for 30 years and in Oakland for 13 years, working on a variety of projects. He is a graduate of the University of Michigan, and he majored in Chinese language and culture. And he completed Mandarin training. He has traveled widely and is a digital production manager, and he's done a whole number of natural history bio blitzing, outreach to the community, using his many skills. He currently is one of the prime watchers of the fish of Lake Merritt, and takes pictures of the fish that come in and out of the lake. So he's just does just about everything. Adrian, we're so happy to have you here tonight. Did I leave anything out of your background that you'd like me to mention at this point?
That's all good. Thank you for the intro.
I should mention Adrian is he's he's worked at the Nature Center, as have I really for a while there, but working to bring natural history programs back, and he's also done just a variety of we founded helped found and the community for Lake Merritt and Lake Merritt Observatory. And so he's just widely out there doing good stuff for the lake and our community. So he's going to talk to us today about one of his favorite groups of birds, the corvids. So Adrian, are you set to go? Let me throw out a groundwork here before I forget. So during Adrian's talk, everybody should be muted. And then if you have a question, type it into chat. Adrian, would you like us to pull questions out, or will you be able to see them and answer them if there's one that's like should be answered immediately or something?
Yeah, I'll try to keep an eye on it, but if you see something that could do with answering, I'm happy to do that.
Okay, and so after his talk, we'll have a time to have questions and answers where you can unmute and ask your question directly of Adrian. So, okay, I guess we're ready to go then. Thank you so much.
Okay. All right, I'm just going to share my screen. One sec. There we go. All right. Can everybody see my this beautiful lady holding up a crow nest here, a raven nest here?
Here.
Welcome everybody. I'm here with a trusty crow friend and a raven friend. This was done by a Zuni artist named Lloyd Lewis that I really love. So that's my desktop companion. I just want to talk a little bit about like why I'm here, why I got interested in ravens, and it might go back to this book, Arable's Ravens, which is, if nothing else, a very good illustration why you shouldn't have a raven as a pet. It's a amusing little hijinks caused by a raven that a family adopts. So that was in my background as a kid, and I always loved watching ravens fly. And then one day I was on my way to work on Mission Street, and I saw a raven fly into this nest, which was on a federal courthouse building. This was back in 2010. And for the next couple months, I went to that nest pretty much every day on the way to and from work, and took pictures, and really got fascinated by like this raven sort of nesting in plain sight, more or less, in San Francisco. And the following year, I was curious if they were going to come back. And they didn't, so I sort of started to go looking. And this other book here, Crow Planet, which I read, I think around that time, I think really it's a really good book on how to be a naturalist, and also like, you know, leaning into your own projects, like finding a project. And I created this project for myself. Before I get into that, I just want to do a little ground setting on like the birds that I'm specifically going to talk about today. So we're talking about two birds in the Corvidae family, and there's 5 of them who live here in the Bay. All of them are pretty pretty common with the exception of the yellow-billed magpie, which I think you can see sort of in the hills around Fremont. I've only seen a couple since I've been here, but all the rest of them are commonly sighted. So the common raven and the American crow are the two birds that I'm focused on here tonight. I'll probably lean a little bit more heavily onto the common raven because I've just spent more time searching for that bird, searching for their nests. But I have a little bit of a hang up when people talk about crows in the media, especially when they're talking about crow intelligence. They often talk about crow, but they don't actually specify the species. And all these species like have amazing sets of intelligences, but they also have a lot of differences. So the New Caledonian crow is probably the one that sort of gets the biggest news around intelligence because it's a tool user. It creates these little sticks that it pokes into holes. It's one of like a number of different species that live in Pacific Islands that were some gradation of crow species across the Pacific. The other one that gets a lot of talk is the carrion crow, which lives in Japan and is known for causing lots of problems with electricity because they set up their nests on power lines and things like that. But they also are known for dropping things in the path of cars to let the cars break open the shells so that they can get at the food. So there's been a lot of tests on both the crow and the raven and some of these other species. But it's always a good thing in mind when you hear in the media when someone's talking about a crow, like ask like, what kind of crow is it, or is it a raven? What kind of raven? So there's 48 species in true crows, and only 8 of them have raven in the name. Most of the rest are crow, except for the rook. So why do we care about these two species? So I talked about one just a moment ago, like this, these really amazingly smart, interesting birds do a lot of play. They are also sort of known as tricksters, but they're also, are they evil? Are they have a harbinger? Are they harbingers of death and disease? Are they invasive pests? And that sort of ties into a lot of the news articles that talk about crows and ravens, how their populations have been growing since the 60s, since the 70s, and how they may have impacted other species. So I will talk a little bit about that. I'll talk a little bit about why I think, in particular, ravens have grown, well, both species have grown in the area. And yeah, I have a theory which I haven't really told anyone very directly before, so you'll be the first audience to hear it. So if you have any feedback for the idea, you can let me know. I do want to do a quick intro into how to tell a crow and a raven apart. If you put in the chat, like how confident are you all in telling the two apart? I would be curious. So I'm going to talk about a few things: size, the neck of the head, the tail, sound, and then behavior. Anyone want to take a guess which is the raven in the two pictures here? They're both enjoying some roadkill. So I got one raven on the left. Well, the raven is this one. And this sort of highlights the challenge of telling these two species apart. They're both black. They both have fairly big beaks when you don't look at them fairly close. So they're not necessarily super easy to tell apart. So, and oftentimes people talk about the size, and it's not actually that useful because you're often seeing that seeing that but at a distance. The raven is going to be the bigger one, so if you see them close to each other. Crow is the sort of the specification for size when you're looking at Merlin and things like that. So we, as a birder, maybe you have that size locked into your head and can navigate it. But I find it difficult sometimes to tell them apart just from size. So here's some size comparisons. So this is an aerial battle that happened over Kaiser Auditorium. The crow up here was harassing the raven and doing some close flying, as they do also with hawks. Here's a raven as compared to a red tail. Red tail is a little bit bigger, and the same with the gull. The gull is just a little bit bigger than the raven. These are all birds that often have conflict in the air. Gulls have, I've seen gulls and ravens go at it, I think because they try to rob each other's nests in the city. And, any corvid is upset when there's a red tail in the air. So I think if you look closely, one of the big things that is different about the raven is that they have like this big they have a frill in front of their neck at their breasts, and this is like the most outrageous example of it. This was on Ocean Beach. I don't know if you like fell in the water or something like that, or had a bath shortly before. But generally, I tend to think of if ravens are kind of a little bit more shaggy and crows are kind of clean cut. So which one is the raven here?
Right.
So there is a raven on the right, but actually it is the same raven. This is the same raven, just exhibiting how they can change the structure of their feathers. So this looks a lot more clean cut, but you can still tell it has these feathers down its neck that are a little bit more full than you would see on a crow. But in this picture, you see it's sort of fully developed. So this is kind of a courting behavior, a display behavior that they have, which is kind of funny looking. It looks like they kind of have a skirt because their feathers come out down in front of them as well. I saw a question from Bob earlier. Are only birds in the genus Corvus considered true crows? Yeah, jays are not included in true crows. They're a part of Corvidae, which is the family. So another place people talk about identifying the two is their tail. And when you're looking up at a blackbird flying in the sky, the common things that people talk about is the raven has this diamond wedge. And the crow has is more of a square. This is sometimes useful, but there's a problem when birds are like in flight and maneuvering, all their tails fan out. So you can't really tell the difference between these two. When they're landed, I tend to think this shaggy, clean-cut thing comes into play as well. Sometimes you see these two bumps on the crow, whereas raven tails kind of have this sort of ragged appearance at the bottom. So here's an example of how the tail is tricky. This is a crow on the left, and this is a raven on the right. So they're both looked kind of wedge-shaped here. You can tell the crow has like that double bump I was talking about. But like on a quick glance, you could think, oh, this has a wedge-tail as well. So you kind of have to look at multiple factors. So here's a bunch of examples of the crow. So this is an example of a crow's tail not being so neat, but you can tell this other one is. But then, the tails are fanned out at certain times. This tail down here in the lower right is sort of more squarish. One other thing, if you can count the pinions, which is the fingers, the big finger feathers at the edge of the wing, ravens have 5, whereas crows have 6. But that's only easy to do if you have a photo, and not easy to do in the moment. All right, so sound is one of the more useful things, but it does take a while to sort of get to know it. I wish I had I wish I had a slightly more complete set of sounds, because I think what I have here isn't quite complete. But they do give some idea of the variety of calls. So we're gonna listen to the raven first. This is probably like the most common call you'll hear. And compare that to the call of a crow. So generally, like, the crow sounds are like a little higher pitch, and the raven sounds are a little lower, more throaty. Oops, and they're both playing at once now. These are crow sounds again. This one sounds a little bit more throaty, but it's still pretty high pitched. One of the raven juveniles sound very shrieky. I always find, let's see. I always find crow juveniles to sound like somebody playing the kazoo. So if you hear a kazoo sound, it's probably a crow. Although mourning doves also have weird kazoo sound sometimes. What they don't really have well listed here, which feels sad, is they do have other sounds. So like ravens in particular have this display thing they do where they sort of hunch over their shoulders and snap their beak together and do a little grunt, and then it feels like they have some weird noise that they gurgle out. Crows have this, especially when they're in roosts, have this really quick knocking sound. Ravens also have like this wonderful like hooting noise that they sometimes do. It's like, hoot, 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 which can be cool if you come across in the morning when there's nothing else around. There are also some, let's see if I can find it. I've never actually heard this call, but this is a sound that only females do. So there is some like male-female calls that are different. I don't know if this is just generally quiet that you don't hear it. Oops. So then finally, like building on that, sort of like having a complete picture is like behavior is also plays into figuring out what these, whether something is a crow or a raven. People often just have described ravens as being solo, but they're not quite solo. They live, pairs live in, or nests, they nest in pairs. They don't really, they travel with their fledges only a couple weeks. They don't spend a lot of time with them. Whereas crows, they spend a lot of time with their family. The siblings come back the next year. So when there's a crow nest, there's often 4 or 5 adults who are working on the nest. Ravens do have big unkindnesses or conspiracies, which is the measure word for the raven. In San Francisco, those are, you can often find big groups at the kind of the edge of the city, the Cow Palace, Fort Funston, Ocean Beach, of course, and Golden Gate Park is a big gathering spot as well. They often play on top of hills all throughout the city. Sutro Tower is a big playmobile for them. Crows also have very large murders, and those are, the biggest ones are the winter roosts here in Oakland. That's the downtown Oakland, very near my house. So like looking at like the number of birds and their size and how they act together can help you figure out which is which. One often thing you see is dive bombing. When there's a blackbird dive bombing a hawk, that's more likely a crow than it is a raven. Ravens do chase hawks as well, but they don't quite use the same tactics. They'll often land on the tree and just sort of yell at it. There is one other quirk of crows that is like maybe the most useful trick to learn to identify a crow is when a crow lands, it'll flick its tail to try to neaten it up. It does it once or twice. It'll land and flick its tail, and I know it's a crow. Whereas a raven, they just kind of plunk down. They don't really adjust their feathers after they land. I know that maybe doesn't really help in your day-to-day crow versus raven, but maybe this gives you some idea of what you can look for. There are gajillions of videos on YouTube as well if you want to spend more time with it. It does take time to like figure it out, especially at distance, but it's not that hard. Okay, crows and ravens in San Francisco. So when I started when I found that nest, and the next year I started looking, I sort of embarked on this somewhat quirky quest to see if I could figure out all the nesting places of ravens in San Francisco. So I've done that since 2011, and I've had like a couple of years where I did like big long walks. It was a very fun exploration of San Francisco. I love walking in San Francisco, so it wasn't a hardship. And then I started, reading more, thinking about crows, and this question of like, are crows and ravens invaders? Are they invasive species? Do they belong here? And the oft-quoted numbers in articles is the Christmas bird count, which started in the early 1900s, and crows and ravens didn't really start showing up until the 70s. And early writings in the 1900s, there there was a guidebook for Golden Gate Park. They said, ravens don't come here. But what those stories often leave out is like, what about before that? And there's quite a bit of evidence that there were likely ravens here. There were ravens all over California, but they definitely started to make adjustments as colonists started to arrive here, as agriculture came, and our human response to corvids was often to kill them, or Western response was to kill them. So cattle herders, poisons, ravens. Golden Gate Park in the 30s had somebody who shot any corvids who came into the park. Also Cooper's hawks. Crows are still a big target of farmers. If you go to YouTube and look up crow hunting, it's still a thing. But there were ravens found on pretty much every expedition that came out to the bay. Somebody found ravens, and there's various stories of how ravens in particular are followed around big herds of cattle, and the ranchers hated that. But I think just the disregard for ravens and the fact that we would kill them probably kept them at bay. But it is true that if you go pre-1900, there was not likely a big population of ravens here, because it was a sea of dunes. The East Bay probably had ravens more in the hills, maybe come down to the flats to hunt, but there wouldn't have been a lot of nesting territory. Never seen a raven nest in an oak tree, but crows definitely nested in the oak trees. There's some writing about how they nested in the oak trees of the UC Berkeley when it was first started. So this is the kind of this is a couple charts from the Christmas bird count. I was gonna do more with this, but the Audubon has cut off access to the count at the moment because they're redoing it. So somebody had to grant me permission to get in. So this is, I looked at 4 species: the raven, the crow, robins, and the red-tailed hawk. And I'm sure there are species, like I looked at brewer's hawk, brewer's birds have gone through this really long decline from some abundance. But there's not a clear sign that these birds are having, these birds by themselves are having an impact on other species. Maybe they play a part in that impact, but there's a lot of things going on. There's actually this, when I did this for the Oakland circle, the robin has these crazy numbers that came through. I think this is around, actually this is earlier. I think this is around 1970, not 1985. These robins have a couple different species, or subspecies, one that migrates and one that doesn't. So I'm guessing that these are big, migratory pulses of robins. But 100,000, I don't even know how that must have been a huge flock that came through. So in my wanderings around San Francisco, I've found all these nests over about 13 years now. And one year I took a sabbatical and I tried to visit every site to see if it was still there. So you'll notice there's a lot of trees that have been removed, or they might have been removed, or they were the trees might have been blown down in a windstorm. So there's a constant disruption of how where raven's nest. And they nest in all sorts of wacky places, which I'll show you in a second. Of all these nests that I visited in 2023, there were 63 that were active. I'm not going to say that these are all the nests that were active in the city that year. It may be a fairly good representative sample, but there's probably more than that. Ravens typically nest in a certain time frame. They're usually done by July, but I have found ravens nesting as late as July, just starting to nest. Sometimes that's a double clutch where they've had one clutch and then had a second one after that. Here's a view of a raven nest. This is from Wellesley. They had a bird cam one year. This is a nest I visited in Candlestick. The first time I went up to it, it had a raccoon in it. But they nest in a bunch of different places, older buildings. They're not always do smart things. They eventually gave up on this nest and moved on to another one. They are fond of Catholic churches in particular, so you often find them hanging out with the saints, or this is on City Hall. City Hall has about 4 nesting sites, and this pair has like rotated between them from year to year. So a lot of these sites, like the ravens, will move from place to place. The ones that are in trees move from trees to trees. But then there's also signs. This is a railroad bridge down by the dump. This is a church in Oakland. These birds now nest in a tree, actually. But this tree, this Monterey pine, is the most typical place that you'll find a raven nest. And these are the kind of numbers. So of those nests, 177% of them were in trees, and 77% of that were Monterey pine. There was a few. There's some in like big eucalyptus. There's some ornamental pine trees that they live in. But it is this tree that seems to like define like where the raven lives, along with the cypress. Trees also play a part in where they go to hang out. So there's kind of 2 kinds of gatherings. There's juveniles that get together, and then there's the big winter roost where they all hang out together. And these are all like the juveniles. They just seem to be having a great time. Find a windy day in San Francisco, and it's fun just to watch the juveniles hanging out with each other. Parents seem to like, once they fledge their kids, I think they basically take them into a flock and then drop them off and then go about their business. But this was a play date on Mount San Bruno. One raven was holding this piece of bark, and these others were chasing it. I have seen ravens use pieces of barks to sort of help them kind of surf in the air along Fort Funston. But then there's the winter roosts where they all hang out together during the winter time, and in particular, and this is sort of like at nighttime where they come down. They usually nest in a big eucalyptus forest. There's a couple other places, usually forests, where they hang out together. Pine forest, cypress in the park, and Fort Funston again. There's a eucalyptus grove there. They hang out in the eucalyptus on Mount Sutro. There's also a lot of play as they come into lands, but there's also these, they'll sometimes gather on the ground and do these courting behaviors where they're all making eyes at each other. Oakland, these blue dots here are raven nests that are kind of current at the moment. I haven't done like a full sweep of all these areas, but I suspect there's a lot more ravens that nest up in the hills. Skyline Drive. There's a lot of Monterey cypress up here, which I'll show you in a second. These red dots are where I know of big winter roosts in particular. Although I think this Berkeley roost might happen. I don't have a precise location for this. San Francisco, they often come down by the pyramid and hang out in the redwood trees there. But smaller flocks sometimes will hang out in different places. And like smaller groups will gather before they do their night roosts. They'll hang out in my neighborhood, which is a few blocks away from where they bed down. Sometimes in the summertime, there's a place over in Emeryville they hang out. There's a bunch of trees sort of behind, not too far from like the civic center of Emeryville. I don't really have a great idea of like how dense crow nests are. They're really hard to. They're much harder to find because they typically choose very dense street trees, like the fern pine, which is the one outside of my house. And down the street, there's a raven that, or not a raven. There's a crow that nests there. I talked about earlier how crows are more social. That the prior fledges will come back and help raise the young. They can be a lot more aggressive than ravens. Ravens tend to like, unless you like really screw with them, they tend to ignore you. Although I have had some ravens notice me and come try to scare me away when I've come back. That happened one year down by the waterfront. But on my street, one of my neighbors tried to help one of the fledges who had landed on the street, and he had a dog. And for months after that, the crows would just yell at him and his dog every time he went up or down the street. And I've had other people who've had ravens in their crows in their backyard, and like the crows basically take ownership and don't want you there, basically. Nice. The crows here tonight are scared away by First Friday, so they probably won't be roosting here tonight. Here's a couple of crow, I think they're crow nestlings, fledges. It's not super obvious, but they often have like a pink little thing where their beak meets their mouth. I'll show an example of a raven later in the day, at the end of the slides. So I've talked a little bit already about this. This is just outside my house, just a couple weeks ago, actually. This is where all my examples of tail feathers came from, actually. It is interesting to like sit like by the estuary, and you can when you get close to sunset in the winter, and you can watch these flocks fly in from different parts of Alameda to join the big roost in downtown Oakland. The big roost in downtown Oakland is all a certain particular type of tree, which I'll talk about in a second. One year there was a parrot that hung out with the flock. The crows didn't seem to know what to do with it. Like the one time I saw it, it was sort of it was trying to join the flock, and there was one crow that was confused and was chasing it, and it seemed to hang out with the murder for quite a while, but I'm not sure if it still does. I kind of enjoy the roost here, especially after they've settled down. If you walk there after sunset, people all going about their business and like not noticing that there's all these crows hanging above their heads. Usually pretty quiet, occasionally a little croak. I always hear people chatting about the birds and being a little freaked out by it. But I also appreciate how when they land on rooftops, how neatly lined up they are, like so individually spaced. You can see it with these ones on the wire too. They seem to have like some guiding rule about how closely they should sit next to each other. So the tree of choice here is the London plane tree, and it doesn't always have to be that in SF. It's redwoods, I think, and there's another, that roost spot in Emeryville I was talking about is, I think, a bunch of big pine trees. The city has now planted like a whole bunch of other pine trees down along the lake, and I'm wondering if people are going to start to regret that as this flock keeps growing, because it's been here since I've been here, 2013. But it definitely feels like it has gotten bigger in the past couple of years. So one question as I was doing this is like, why are there fewer ravens here in Oakland? There definitely are ravens here. They definitely nest here. There's definitely more ravens in the hills, but like compared to what you find in San Francisco, there's just a lot less. And as I was thinking, as I did that 22-3 study and just saw how important that those two trees were, the Monterey cypress and the Monterey pine, and how much in Oakland, almost all our parks are predominantly oak trees. There are Monterey pine and cypress, but they're just not as prevalent, at least in the flats. So the ravens that do nest here typically are on structures. So like a water tower, there's an ad board, there's a couple of buildings. So they're not finding the trees as easily. And there's also the pressure because there's a lot more crows. So the big worry about the amount of crows and ravens in the East Bay and the city is how much pressure they might put on local populations of other birds. And the research really doesn't bear out the idea that a bunch of crows and ravens will reduce the population. So they've done these removal studies where they sort of essentially remove the predator and see the impact on that. And it isn't clear, in most cases it is not clear that they've had any particular impact on the other species. And this is partially because there are actually so many other things that are predating on bird species. There's squirrels, raccoons, cats, other birds. The other bird that was hunted by the Golden Gate Park hunter was the Cooper's hawk, which people hated. There's a lot of literature about that I found at one point. So I feel like there's like this undue hatred in circles towards the corvid as being to blame for things, and I think that's kind of a mistake. Maybe they play a small part, maybe they don't, but it may impact your very local area. So if like you happen to live near a crow roost, that's definitely going to impact the birds. But the birds are probably just going somewhere else. They're probably not being eaten necessarily. So the question is like, why do they do so well? And it's just because we provided them all these things. There's good resources, there's roadkill, there's garbage, there's people who feed them. I've been in Golden Gate Park when people have scattered food all over the place for the ravens. And there's good nesting habitat, and there's good roosting habitat. So there's all these perfect things for these birds who are very smart and can navigate our city and figure out what we do. So the common thread of their success is really us. And if you think back about what the bay looked like before us and what it looks like now, we have completely transformed the Bay Area. So my term of art for it was crow forming. Like we have made these places the perfect habitat for these birds. But it's interesting to see that there have been different choices in trees that seem to maybe play a part in their different distribution. So just an example of this is San Francisco in 1859. You can see, so it doesn't have the middle filled in, but you can see the dunes make it all the way to downtown. There were just not a lot of trees. There was a oak forests in Golden Gate Park around here, I think. There was various willow groves. Of course, 1859 was, not quite 100 years since the Mexicans and the Spanish came. So a lot of this was already grazed. So if there were a lot of trees, were probably eaten as well. There might have been nesting habitat on the cliffs in the north and the south, but really, not a lot. But here's what we've done to the city: is we've planted thousands and thousands of trees. This is a map of the particular Monterey cypress through San Francisco, and then. Not quite the same story for Oakland, given that there were these significant oak forests and the forests in the hills. But even so, we have planted 60,000 plus trees in Oakland. So here's a map of the Monterey pine. So there's some through the city. But the biggest concentration is up in the up near the parks. So I think the question is should we do anything about this? A typical management practice of ravens in particular is to kill them. So we've done that. I think Point Reyes does removals. I don't know if they kill them actually. But they killed several thousand to protect sage grouse in Utah. There's been a project to deter ravens from eating tortoises in the desert using lasers, which I think has had some success. I know falconers have been tried a lot for crows, particularly around trying to keep the roosts away. We could also chop all the trees down in San Francisco and return it back to dunes. I'm sure that would be a good political strategy. We could do things like keep encouraging other predators like bald eagles, great horned owls, things that prey on the young of ravens and crows. How do we get people not to feed ravens and crows? How do we lock down or make sure our garbage is locked down? How do we prevent that extra feed, make them work a little harder for it? But I do also like to think about the flip side of are there really that many in the grand scheme of things when you compare it to the population of humans? Are humans unable to live alongside large numbers of things? We always seem to get upset when something grows beyond its bounds and we have to find a way to tamp it back down. I do also like to celebrate interesting species that can survive us. And just, on the note about, corvids eating birds' eggs and things, we eat a lot more eggs than they ever have. And we've harnessed the whole species to do that for us. So anyway, so I think the thing to think about, which is the long-term thing, the harder thing to do, is like how do we steward what lives here versus like try to control it. So like where do we accept the way things are? How do we build the habitat to drive the species that we want to see, rather than trying to like force something to happen, as we often do. So
Adrian?
yeah,
So you've raised some really interesting questions that I hope you have time to do a little discussion
sure.
after. I'd like to ask, is this an okay time to make a brief end of our program conclusion slides and then come back?
Yep.
Is it an okay break time? So if
Yep.
you can, I'll just, if
Do
you
you want me
could
to unshare?
unshare, and I will share, we will go to our concluding slides here. And so we want to thank everybody for being here. This is just such a beautiful and fascinating presentation of somebody who really knows nature in the city. It's really been beautiful to listen to and to watch. We want to thank Adrian, the California Naturalist Urban Estuaries course graduates who are amongst us and have been doing things. New Voices of Writing externs, Water Justice Fellows, Alameda County Clean Water Program, iNaturalist, the Lake Merritt Boating Center, Adopt a Spot volunteers, Lake Merritt Breakfast Club, Oakland Public Works, Lake Merritt Institute, Measure DD, and all of Oakland for caring about our beautiful lake and our habitat. And sharing it. So coming up, Rotary Nature Center Friends has a chat on July 10th that will be given by Karina Gould, the tribal spokeswoman for the Confederated Villages of Lashan. So this will be not a first Friday, but it'll be the second Friday. And we're really looking forward to her thoughts about rematriating the land, the strides that they have made, her group has made over the last decade, and some of the response in Oakland to learning about Ohlone ways and giving back some of the land that was taken. So we are going to continue our plankton monitoring weekly. We're moving to the area around the boathouse, Lake Merritt Boating Center dock, because the junior center is having a large group of campers coming in. California Academy of Sciences is hosting a Snapshot Cal Coast all of the month of June. So if you make iNaturalist observations in the month of June, it will be added to that. And many people don't realize, but Lake Merritt is actually the coast of California. It's part of the bay. It's just an outpocketing of the bay, which is an outpocketing of the Pacific Ocean. We're going to be continuing our stewardship at the Oakland Park, a tributary to Lake Merritt, and celebrating other nature-related and stewardship-related programs. Our Urban Estuaries program is our Urban Estuaries course is open for enrollment now, and you can go to the Eventbrite and get the details of how to enroll in that. And then, let's see, we'd like to thank the KTOP TV in Oakland for rebroadcasting our Lakeside chats. And they broadcast a selection of older chats, which you can also see on our YouTube playlist on the first two Sundays of the month between 6 and 7 p.m. on KTOP TV. And on the last two Sundays, they air the current Lakeside chat that we just heard today. If you enjoy what we are doing, Rotary Nature Center Friends would appreciate your support. We have some big projects ahead, including the Naturalist course, but we're hoping to host some some other events at the lake in the fall, and your support would be very helpful. Reminder that Snapshot South Coast is all of June. We are stewards of the Lake Merritt Wildlife Refuge. We regularly host school groups and members of the general population for bird watching, nature walks, plant identification, planting and weeding and testing Lake Merritt's waters. And that is, we'd like to again thank you for coming and look forward to your joining us again in July when we hear from Karina Gould. So with that, I will stop my share and ask you to raise a hand and to ask Adrian a question. And Adrian, if you had some more you wanted to finish up with, please go ahead and do that now. And then we'll take questions.
That the slide you saw last was really the last slide. One, please don't vilify the crows and ravens. The one story I have to share around be careful of feeding them is a friend of mine who I talked to recently. She said her husband started to feed some crows, and suddenly there was a whole group of crows showing up at their door in their neighborhood pretty much every day. And one of the neighbors really hates it, and she can't tell them that her husband did it. So they remember who's been nice to them. That may not be the best thing for you. So.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, that urge to feed the birds is strong. We have a question from Paula about the structure, the social structure within these murders or the roosting areas. Do the birds have a leader? Nearly hundreds of crows fly by her window, and it seems that they are all following one crow. Is that what people have found?
I don't. I've not actually read a study. I have not really read a study about that. I have tried to watch. So in my neighborhood, so I live by downtown Oakland. There's usually 4 or 5 groups, separate groups, that sort of are hanging out together, and they sort of move around where they eventually end up roosting for the night. It does often seem like they're waiting for something, but I've never been able to pick out is it one particular crow. I'm sure there is a pecking order, and I'm sure there is some sense of leadership, but I also feel like there's some sense of critical mass. Like when one crow leaves, does another crow leave? Or is another 3 crows? So you'll see one crow leave, and then suddenly 2 others, and then suddenly the whole thing is flying off. So I think there's maybe some internal decision making about whether any movement is a good one or not. But it's a good question. I don't specifically know the answer, I should say.
So, that seems like are the roosts, are they made up of pretty much the same birds? Has anybody studied individuals and seen if they hang together? Especially, well, you might expect the ones that are breeding in family groups, if they have helpers at the nest, that they're helping their parents. They're not just randomly helping other birds.
Yeah.
So they're probably going to be there. That sounds really interesting. To try to figure out the social structure and the sex ratios in them, what that might be. That would be interesting.
Yeah, it would be interesting. Unfortunately, that's
hard
it's
to
hard to tell the difference between male and female without capturing.
Yeah. Let's check out more of the.
Paula, where is your roost? Paula Hamilton.
Well, Leo had a question about why they might be more of them, and might be more loud at different times of years. Oh, there's Paula. Yes.
So we live across from the Rotary Nature Center in the Park
Okay.
Bellevue Tower.
Okay.
And last year they built a nest, a pair of crows built a nest in the redwood tree outside our window,
Oh,
which
cool.
is on the floor. And we had so much fun watching them. There were four fledglings, and the day they left, there was so much noise in the neighborhood. And then they all left, and I was hoping they would come back to the same nest, but unfortunately, a few months, last fall, there was a terrible windstorm one day, and it knocked the nest out of the tree. So they still come back, but there's no nest to come back to.
Yeah. Yeah, essentially, I don't know like the fidelity that crows have to their nesting sites. Ravens are they may come back to the same nest. They may build another one. Um, they usually build it like nearby. The ones that build on buildings will build it like next couple very close by.
Adrian, excuse me for interrupting. This was such a great presentation. And if I might ask you one more question, which is slightly unrelated, but there are a pair of red-tailed hawks that built a nest in the sign on the Kaiser building in the R.
That's an interesting story because that was a raven nest 2 years prior, and it feels like that red-tailed nests and this pair of ravens have been sort of the red tails seem to like take over the nest. They used to nest in that AT&T building just off Thomas Berkeley Way at Webster. They took over a raven nest there, I think, and then the ravens went to the Kaiser sign, and then the red tails took that one over. So those ravens are now downtown by just off Broadway and 14th. But yeah, there's other in San Francisco. There was a raven pair that nested on Mission High for like 12 years, and that one was taken over by a red-tailed hawk pair as well. Red-tailed hawks are kind of lazy, so they like to take over other nests apparently. So.
Thank you.
Yes, I set up a viewing scope in my office to watch that nest. So there's three red tails in the Kaiser sign.
Mm. Yeah.
So I'm not sure, Leo. There's anything you can do about keeping crows quiet in the morning? They wake up pretty early when they're breaking up the roosts. So they basically wake up near to sunset, or the roost usually disperses by sunset. So if you live near roosts, which would probably be not a year at that, if this time of year, it probably wouldn't be a year-long nest, a year-long roost. So they might not be coming back in a couple months. But it's hard to say. Yeah, Nolan Park has always, since I've been here, has started to grow as like a central point for the raven population, and I feel like that's like one of their roosting spots must be there as well.
What is the symbiotic relationship between the wolves and the ravens at the zoo? That Allison is referring to?
Well, I don't know if there's something specific about the wolves there, but
Oh.
ravens and wolves have had thousands of years of working together, um, um, where potentially they help the wolves find prey, and then they sort of get to feed on the carcass once the wolves have made their kill. Some think that that's when humans came along, they sort of adopted them as sort of like similar to wolves, as they would provide them with
The
access
start of
to food.
domestication. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Um, Rebecca, is that the Rebecca Johnson I know? If so, hello.
Very interesting.
Uh, I'm sure it helps ravens to have unsecured trash. I have definitely seen ravens stealing trash. One of the pictures of the raven on a car that I had was waiting for an open an open time to grab some trash off Ninth Avenue. I've seen close by me a raven like finding some big pieces of meat in a garbage can. Um, I you know so I think there is a lot of access to both unsecured trash and roadkill that help ravens in the city, but like that wouldn't necessarily explain the difference in, say, Oakland versus San Francisco, or San Francisco versus Marin, or San Jose, where there are differences in those populations. Um, so like so ravens haven't necessarily grown the same rate everywhere they are. Um, so I guess what I was thinking about in this lecture is like why would there be more in San Francisco in particular than places in the East Bay, or in the deep South Bay? I think along the San Francisco Peninsula, there's the population is still pretty big down fairly far.
Interesting.
I'm sure it helps the crows as well. Sorry about your mic, David.
Is David muted?
He said he couldn't get his mic to work.
Oh. Ah.
Yeah, I did have. If you want to read more about ravens and crows in general, I think one of the best books to read is "In the Company of Crows and Ravens" I'll put it in the chat, by Marsluff, who's a researcher at the University of Washington. If you've heard of the Dick Cheney mask study, he's the one who created that. There's also a guy, Bern Heinrich, who has a bunch of books that are really interesting. Both of these have done, more more direct studies of birds as well, like tracking and things that I, as a random person out there, can't do. My favorite person to listen to crows is a woman on Instagram, Kaylee Swift, who studied with Marsluff. She did a study about crow funerals, which was kind of fascinating. So there's this, apparently, like, there's a dead crow, like, crows will gather and seem to like say farewell. I've never seen it myself. I feel a little sad about it, but it does happen. So I'm just going to pop in a bunch of other links. Here's an article about the question of do crows reduce other songbirds, and a link to the study that's based on. And this was a KQED article that I was quoted in. And I did actually write something on crows for Bay Nature a long time ago.
Yeah, I have that. I can put that into a post chat letter. We can harvest these and send them out to people.
Yeah.
That'd be great.
And if you like
Very
maps here,
interesting,
these tree maps, a lot of cities actually have these. They're fun. They're fun to look at.
Tree. Yeah. Well, it's really fascinating that they, the extent of play, how play is involved, and intelligence usually associated with group living, and what that's all about with them. I'm really curious about that, and I haven't read or thought that much about it, but it's a very interesting talk in that light.
Does anybody have any fun encounter with crow or raven that they want to share at all? Or not fun?
No. I saw a crow and two birds. They were looking. There's a crow and there's another bird, which was not a crow, and they were the not a crow was looking at a piece of food on the pavement, and the crow came up behind it and pecked it on the back end, and it jumped, and then the crow got right in there and seized the pavement, like it had just manipulated its behavior that way. I thought that was funny. But I'm sure they do lots more interesting and sophisticated things. I wonder how they evolved their ability to use tools and in what context. All of this play and stuff is helpful to them in their survival and getting on with their lives, because it's just a fascinating. All these things are really fascinating. And thank you for I had not known about them, so really appreciate that. Oh, volunteer with Bay Raptor Rescue and Lindsay Wildlife. Allison is called to rescue baby corvids and always covers her head to be sure the parents don't see my face, because they'll remember you, right, Allison?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Very
Yes,
interesting.
they're always there calling and flying overhead.
Oh.
We have to be very careful.
Yeah, I bet.
Gosh.
David, you asked about eating patterns and habits. Yeah, both crows and ravens are omnivores. They both will eat both baby birds and eggs. They both eat insects. Definitely would probably eat vegetables and anything that they'll try anything. I've seen them eating like Jello off the ground and things. So I think they're a lot like us. They'll at least try it once and see whether it's good.
Oh. Good one, Anthony. So I guess I can imagine as agriculture became more intense and food resources of humans became more concentrated, that having scarecrows would be a really good strategy for humans to protect what they had, and could have influenced the crow's behavior.
Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting. Very interesting things to think about. Thank you. All righty. So, I'm trying. Are there more questions out here that we would want to consider here?
I think I answered all the questions,
All
but
the
if there's
questions.
anything else that I missed, please.
Well, I'm definitely going to go out there and watch those crows by the lake, and I've seen them. I guess one of the things they have a somewhat defined breeding season, right?
Yeah,
So,
just
and
kind of.
then the murders tend to pick up a lot afterwards.
Yeah,
So, that would be interesting to, so that's why they're spread out and then they get back together again.
yeah. So like, they often get back together. Like they say, like they don't, don't actually have like a. They have a lot of guesses about why they get back together, but it's probably
Mm-hmm.
like finding mates and also like communicating, like good places to find
Mm-hmm.
food, whatever.
Yeah. The
Um,
safety of the herd.
Safety of the herds. Yeah,
Mhm.
safety in numbers is a big part of it.
Wow. Well,
I
thank
want
you
to
so much.
thank I want to thank Adrian for a very informative presentation.
Me too. I have lots to think about, and we'll share the all of the great books and that were shared in the chat. When I get the chat printout, I can put that into a post chat email. So I guess we're coming to the end of our immediate questions, but it was really wonderful evening. Thank you so much, Adrian. Really appreciate sharing your really deep knowledge of these species that are all amongst us. So it was really great. So thank you so much.
You're welcome. Glad you all enjoyed. Thank you for
Yeah.
organizing, Katie and the Rotary Nature Center Friend team. Appreciate y'all.
Yeah. Okay, well, have a great evening, everybody. A great weekend. Let's get out there and watch those crows, and hope we'll have some beautiful weather to do that in. So thank you, everybody.
Bye bye.
Bye now. Good night.